Hello everyone! Today I'll be showing off my Dinomorphia deck profile. It's finally complete, meaning that I no longer have to use proxies. Now to start off with the main deck. We have 3 copies of Dinomorphia Theresia, based on the Therizinosaurus, 2 copies of Dinomorphia Diplos, and, of course, the most important cards in the deck. I'm just going to lay out the in-archetype cards first, and then explain them later. 2 copies of Dinomorphia Domain, 1 copy of Dinomorphia Frenzy, 1 copy of Dinomorphia Alert, probably should have been 2 now that I think about it, 2 copies of Dinomorphia Brute, 2 copies of Dinomorphia Intact, 2 copies of Dinomorphia Sonic, and 1 copy of Dinomorphia Shell, and finally 3 copies of Dinomorphia Reversion. Let me explain how this deck works, for those of you who don't actually know how this deck works yet, or those of you who are quite new to modern-day Yu-Gi-Oh! So those of you who are new to this game, or at least this updated version of the game, as most people only know this game via the original anime of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, and even fewer have watched the actual sub. This deck is focused on fusion summoning, which is a concept that a lot of you will be very familiar with. Fusion monsters in the extra deck, which is over here. Now, you might also notice, why are there only 2 monsters in a deck that focuses on fusing monsters together? Here's why. The most important card in this deck is Dinomorphia Domain. Arguably. Some also say it's Frenzy. The reason is because, as you can see here, during the main phase, so this is after you draw your card and then you wait for any effects to happen, you move on to your main phase, you can pay half your life points, oh sorry, not the tripod, pay half your life points, and you can fusion summon a Dinomorphia fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand, your deck, or your field as material. So it's very powerful. It also has a second effect that when your opponent activates a card or effect while your life points are 2,000 or less, which is going to happen a lot, you can banish this card from your graveyard. GY stands for graveyard. You take no effect damage from your opponent's card effects this turn. Now, this trend of an effect on the field, an effect in the grave, will be very consistent for all of these spells and traps. Now for the monsters. Theresia, if she's normal or special summoned, you can set a Dinomorphia trap directly from your deck into your spell and trap zone. So the spell and trap zone would be like these spaces in the back. I'll show you them later. The monster zones are in the front. Then, if your life points are 2,000 or less, this card gains 500 attack. Not that it matters, she's not staying on the field very long. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish a trap from your grave, special summon a level 4 lower Dinomorphia monster from your grave, except herself. That monster will be Diplos. Now, what he does is that, if normal special summoned, you can send a Dinomorphia card from your deck to your graveyard. Then, if your life points are 2,000 lower or less, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent. For context to those of you who have never played the game, you have 8,000 life points in total. So this little piece of effect damage, we call it burn damage, is rather insignificant. And of course the graveyard effect is, if it's destroyed, special summon a level 4 or lower Dinomorphia except itself. What you want to do most of the time is that you normal summon her, you set one of these 2 cards, then you set whatever spells and traps you have left, if you can use them, and then you pass turn. When it's your opponent's turn, you flip one of these 2 up, fusion summon. Now what does Frenzy do that's so different? Now this one, only on your opponent's main phase, and only the main phase, you can't do this during the middle of a battle, halve your life points, obviously, fusion summon a Dinomorphia fusion monster, but here's the difference. From your extra deck, using one monster from your deck, and only your deck, and one monster from your extra deck, which would be here, as material. And of course the graveyard effect, when your life points are 2,000 lower or less, banish it, no effect damage. Now, why would you use a monster from your extra deck to summon another from the extra deck? That would be because of this guy. I'm going to be skipping a little bit forward, so I'm just going to show you the 3 fusion monsters we have. Kentragina, based on the Kentrasaur. Stealthburgia, I forgot which pterosaur this thing's based on. And Rexstrom. You might notice that all of these are called Dinomorphia something. That's because this is an archetype, for those of you not in the know. An archetype is a group of cards which share a name. Share a part of their name with each other, and cards are specifically listed in quotation marks. So, here is who we are bringing out with those 2 traps. Kentragina, I should also note for those of you who do care, this artwork is censored, you know, localization and all that. This one will be your main damage dealer. 4,000 attack? Wow, that's half of your opponent's life points. That must mean that she's going to be able to deal 4,000 damage each turn. No! Because her effect is that she loses attack equal to your life points. So you want your life points to be as low as humanly possible. Thankfully, your deck does a lot with that. Now, her materials are 2 Dinomorphia monsters with different names. So you can use Domain in order to summon her really easily. Now, minus the attack loss, you can also use the following effects once per turn. Now, if it says once per turn at the end of a sentence, that means it is once per player. Which means if your opponent someone gets control of this, they can use the effect as well. Like that'll ever happen. If it says once per turn at the beginning of a sentence, like for example, once per turn, colon, and then it says the effect, that means once per copy of the card. What does this mean? If you can somehow put a card at the front on the field, remove it from the field, like say, put it in your graveyard, and then put it back to your field, you can use the effect again. Historically, that has led to a load of shenanigans happening. So many shenanigans. Which is why hard once per turns, or once per turns at the end of the sentence, which means once per user of the card, were implemented. So remember, this is once per player, not once per copy. During the main phase, quick effect, which means it can be used in response to your opponent's cards, or in response to other cards, meaning you can use this on your opponent's turn. You can pay half your life points, and banish a Dinomorphia normal trap from your graveyard, and this card's effect becomes the effect of the trap when it is activated on the field. And it is destroyed by battle card effect, special summon a level for all lower Dinomorphia. You can probably guess who. Now, to skip a little bit forward, there's 2 different types of traps in this game. Well, 2 different types of traps for this deck. There's actually 3 types of traps, but we don't use continuous. You might notice a difference between these 2. This little marking over here. A normal trap will just say trap card and have nothing next to the name. A counter trap, aka the kind of card where only counter traps can even react to them, have this little symbol right around here. This little arrow that shows a reversal, because it's meant to reverse the tide of battle, essentially. No, Mirror Force is not a counter trap, I'm sorry. Next we have, now, this deck focuses on having your life points being halved again and again and again and again. To the point that sometimes you can get down to 1 life point, because the way it works is that if your life points are a decimal point, it rounds up. So, you might even get down to like 1 life point, and you're probably wondering, how am I not going to get killed by a breeze of wind, other than the effects? This is where Stealthburgia comes in, because this thing's effect, which also has the same summoning requirements as Kentragina, but has 0 attack and 2,500 defense, meaning he's going to be in defense position the entire time, never on the attack. While your life points are 2,000 or less, you do not have to pay life points to activate trap cards or Dinomorphia monster effects. Trap cards, period. Not ones named Dinomorphia. Any trap card at all. This will be very important in the future if you use Solemn Judgment, which I do not have. Now, hard ones per turn in the following effects. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to the monster's original attack. Original attack means the attack you see listed on the card, so even if it's decreased or increased, the original attack is what it lists on the card. Now, for the final effect, if it's destroyed, special summon level 4 or lower Dinomorphia, we all know the drill. And now, for the big boy. Rexstrom, a Dinomorphia fusion monster, and a Dinomorphia monster, period. Which is why you use this. And hey, look, he's on the picture. Which is why you need to use one from your deck and one from your extra deck. Most of the time, you'll be running multiples of these cards anyway. He has copies, by the way. So even most of the time I'll use Stealth Bergia as an actual material. Now this thing has quite a few effects. Your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters they control that have attack greater than or equal to your life points. Means if it's on the field and its attack is higher than your life points or equal to it, they can't do anything. This isn't an activated effect, you don't have to switch it on, it's just always on. This is what is known as a continuous effect. Now, hard ones per turns on the following effects. Quick effect. You can pay half your life points, and of course, all your opponent's monsters have their attack become equal to your life points until the end of the turn. Remember that most of the time, your life points will be down to 500 or 250. And this thing has 300 attack. And of course, if destroyed, you can special summon a level 6 or lower Dinomorphia. Oh, we have level 6 Dinomorphias? Oh yes, we do! And that is why it's very important for the deck. Now, with that slight tangent, which has taken a couple minutes, let me speed blitz through the rest of the cards. Now, what does Alert do? It revives 2 of your Dinomorphias, up to 2 whose levels equal to 8 or less, so 1 fusion monster or 2 of these guys. And of course, but you can't declare an attack this turn, you cannot special summon other monsters for the rest of the turn, except for Dinomorphia monsters. And of course, the graveyard effect, banish it, and you don't take effect damage for the rest of the turn. Now for Brute. What does Brute do? Well, you can halve your life points, destroy a Dinomorphia you control, and a card your opponent controls, and destroy them. And of course, the banish effect, you take no effect damage. Actually, this thing also involves you halving your life points. You're not gonna ever get rid of that cost for these cards. Now for Intact, this is a counter trap, meaning there are 3 spell speeds. There's 3 speeds for cards. One is spell speed 1. This would essentially be a normal spell. You activate it on your turn. You can only activate it then. Spell speed 2 is quick effects, which you have already seen. Now, if it's summoned, if a card is summoned and it activates its effect, that is spell speed 2, even though they're monsters. Spell speed 3, now remember these are fan-made terms, but spell speed 3 is counter traps, and only counter traps. Meaning, anything from a lower speed cannot react to anything from a higher speed. Meaning, you can't react to this unless you have another counter trap. Very powerful. Now what does this thing do? When a monster effect is activated while you control a Dinomorphia card, halve your life points, negate the activation of the effect, and destroy the monster. Also, when you take battle damage, it's halved. And of course, you can banish it from your grave, you don't take battle damage. Now Sonic is essentially just Intact, but it applies to spell and traps. So, while control Dinomorphia, pay half, activation is negated, destroy the card, banish it, you don't take battle damage. Now, Shell here is a bit different. This is essentially your in case of emergency card. You're never really going to use this unless you're in dire straits. At the end of your opponent's battle phase, pay half your life points, special summon a Dinomorphia token, which is a dinosaur, is Dark Attribute, is level 10, and has no attack and 3000 defense, and if you do, for the rest of the turn, while you control the token, your opponent cannot target other monsters you control for attacks except for that one. And during damage calculations, like you attack a card, it hits the monster, and then the damage is calculated. While your life points are 2000 or less, if you take any battle damage, you can banish this card from your grave, and you don't take any battle damage. Now, what is a token? It is essentially something that you place in the monster zone, but it's not an actual card, so if it leaves the field, it just disappears. I use this token, it specifically says token, as like a placeholder. Now, the final Dinomorphia card. Dinomorphia Reversion. If you control a Dinomorphia fusion monster, halve your life points, banish a counter trap. This thing copies the counter trap's effects when it is activated. So you can copy Shell, Sonic, or Intact. And of course, you can banish it, you don't take any battle damage. These are your Dinomorphia bread and butter cards. And actually, the only cards that are named Dinomorphia. To my knowledge, unless there's been new cards released, which there aren't. Now, with all that being said, now I will move on to the cards in the deck that do not actually belong to the Dinomorphia archetype. Which is the rest of these. So here we have 1 Upstart Goblin, 3 Fossil Dig, 3 copies of Pot of Duality, 3 copies of Trap Trick, 3 copies of Soul of the Supreme King, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, and 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Now these are the ones that I have. These are stuff that I put in here, oh yes, and 1 Called of the Grave. This is stuff that I intentionally put in the deck to make it more powerful. There's 2 more cards here, which I just put because I didn't have enough space. Well, I needed to fill out the deck list, and these are just generic cards which I have, which actually work. Remember, I have multiple decks right over there in the boxes, meaning that I can't exactly have everything at perfect ratios. I also have to take sleeves into account. Now, let me explain what these cards do, and also for a brief rundown on what these 2 do. This is Monster Reborn. You probably recognize it if you're a Gen 1 for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is this real? Is this real? I'm confused if this is real or not. It's the holographic seal? This might be a proxy. Hold on. I have another copy of Monster Reborn somewhere. Yeah, that doesn't look real. I have another copy of it. I have another copy. I'll go get it just a moment. Now, Monster Reborn special summons a monster from either grave to your field. It's a very generic effect, and while it sounds powerful, it is no longer as powerful as it once was in the past. In the past, that effect would have been remarkable, game-changing almost. But a lot of the cards you have now either special summon themselves from the graveyard, banish themselves from the graveyard, so remove themselves from play, which means that they're not going to be in the graveyard anymore because they've already destroyed them, they've already removed themselves from the graveyard in order to activate effects, or they have actually done, or they just won't really help you. I'll find that copy later. This is going back in the sleeve. As for Dark Ruler No More, I have 2 more copies, but they're in my Phantom Knight deck. You can negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent controls. This is a spell card, which is spell speed 1, so it's that. And until the end of the turn, you cannot... And so everything in your opponent's field, all monsters have their effects negated, but for the rest of the turn, you cannot deal damage to your opponent. Like, they can't do any damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. So even if they have negation using a monster, no. Upstart Goblin lets you draw one card from your deck, but your opponent gains 1,000 life points. But we're going to be taking away those life points anyway, so it doesn't matter. Why did I only play one? I couldn't afford to buy 3. 3 copies of Fossil Dig. You can add a level 6 or lower dinosaur monster from your deck to your hand. Notice the lack of a once per turn. Meaning if I have 3 of these, I can search 3 dinosaur monsters. But in this deck, you don't actually want to do that. You want them to be in your deck. But it's a good way to search out the Resia. 3, Pot of Duality. Now this thing, you can excavate the top 3 cards of your deck, so like, take the top 3 and look what they are. Add one of them to your hand and shuffle the rest back into your deck. Now, you can only activate 1 Pot of Duality per turn, and you cannot special summon monsters during the turn you activate the card. Special summon means anything that is not your normal summon. Meaning, special summoning from normal effect monsters or normal monsters, fusion summoning, synchro, Xyz, pendulum, or link summoning. You can't do that. Now for Trap Trick. Simple effect. Banish a normal trap from your deck, and then set one with the same name directly from your deck. Also, it can be activated this turn. Now, you can only activate 1 trap card for the rest of the turn after this effect resolves, and it's a hard once per turn. Now, for those of you who have heard the meme, I activate my trap card, you can only do that after you set it, and then it's 1 turn that is passed. Which is why this thing has to specify that you can activate the trap this turn. Now for a bit of a complicated one. Soul of the Supreme King. Pay half your life points, and special summon Supreme King Zark from your extra deck, ignoring summoning conditions. Why is this important? Because this is Supreme King Zark. Yugi Boomers cower in fear. There's 2 text boxes. But we don't have to care about that. 4,000 attack and defense, but its effects are negated, so none of these words matter. All that matters is the big chunky box. And also this is destroyed by it placing the spell and trap zone, and then this text box applies. Where in the spell and trap zone? This place. So the far edges of it, which is where pendulum monsters go. There, I have given you a brief explanation. And of course, when your opponent activates a spell card or effect while this is in your grave, you can banish this card from your grave and 1 Supreme King Zark that you control, special summon up to 1 of a Pendulum Dragon monster, Xyz Dragon monster, Synchro Dragon monster, and Fusion Dragon monster. Now, I do have Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which is a very powerful card, but that is in my Virtual World deck, so I have not put it in this current deck profile. But just know, I have it. 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. For those of you who don't know the game currently, this card was made specifically because of how powerful such effects were becoming, and effects that dumped cards from the deck to the graveyard, or etc, etc. Now, when a card or effect is activated that includes any of the following effects, those being adding a card from deck to hand, special summoning something from the deck, or sending a card from the deck to the grave, you can discard this card, negate the effect. There is a difference between negating the activation and negating the effect, but now is not the time to explain that because that's a matter of semantics. Finally, 3 copies of Effect Veiler. During your opponent's main phase, you can send this card from your hand to graveyard as a quick effect, target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate that face-up monster's effects until the end of the turn. It's not a soft once per turn. The reason I'm using Effect Veiler, I can't afford an infinite impermanence. Finally, 1 Called by the Grave. This was made to counter this one. Target one monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, and if you do, until the end of the next turn, its effects are negated, as well as the activated effects and effects of the field of monsters with the same original name. So essentially you banish one, and anything with this name can't activate its effects, all of them negated. Now, this isn't a normal spell. As you can see by the lightning bolt, it's a quick effect, meaning that you can activate this in response to your opponent's cards. And now, with all that tedium finally completed, I will now move on to the extra deck. I am sorry if I'm a bit long-winded. I speak in paragraphs, something which I have found is an actual symptom of my neurodivergence. Yay! Now on to the extra deck. We have 2 copies of Kentragina, you already know her. 2 copies of Stealthbergia, you already know it. 2 copies of Dinomorphia Rextrum, you already know this dude. 2 copies of Zark, you already know this guy. 1 copy of Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon. Remember, I have Crystal Wing in another deck, but I'm not taking it out and re-sleeving it for the sake of this deck profile. But just to know, I have, hypothetically speaking, if I was in a duel and I would actually put places in the locals. Actually, you know what, for the sake of argument, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Actually, it is the same sleeves, I can use this. Never mind then. Yeah, 1 Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. 1 copy of Evolza... hold on, let's see. Lagia. 1 copy of Evolza Dolka. 1 copy of Tornado Dragon. 1 copy of number 39 Utopia, or Hope, as its original name was in the Japanese. And 1 copy of Shining Numbers 39 Utopia the Lightning. Now, I've already given a lengthy explanation of this one, and this one, so just letting you know of the spell effect of Zark, because the monster effect is never going to be online. If this thing is in your spell and trap zone, so if it's in your zone right here, which is what this is for, but only the furthest most spell and trap zones, which is what the gems are meant to indicate. Fusion, Synchro, and Xyz monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects, and once per turn, when a card is added from the main deck to your opponent's hand, except during the draw phase or the damage step, you can destroy that card in their hand. So very powerful. What does Greedy Venom Fusion Dragon do? Now, ignore the must be fusion summon thing because the trap cheats it out. Once per turn, soft once per turn as you can see, which means once per copy. You can target a face-up monster in your opponent's field, and until the end of the turn, its attack is 0 and its effects are negated. And if this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can destroy as many monsters on the field as possible, then you can banish a level 8 or higher dark monster from your graveyard, special summon it. Except, because this thing wasn't fusion summoned properly, you can't do that. Now for Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Synchro monsters, I'll explain that in a future video. Once per turn, so once per copy. When another monster's effect is activated, quick effect, negate the activation, destroy the monster, and if you do, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster's original attack until the end of the turn. This girl, yes girl, is already 3000 attack. If it destroys something with a big attack, it's gaining it. And of course the second effect for OTKs. If this card battles an opponent's level 5 or higher monster during the damage calculation, this card gains attack equal to the attack of the opponent's monster it is battling during the damage calculation only. So it'll just boost itself to gain the opponent's monster's attack, sock him in the jaw, and then leave him dead. Now for Xyz monsters. Volza Lagia and Dolka. Let me give you an explanation of what an Xyz monster is. This will be very quick. So, we didn't have to explain synchros because we're not actually properly synchro summoning, but we are going to properly summon out these ones. Not that one. These two are level 4s. So to summon an Xyz monster, you take these two, which are on the field, put them on top of each other, and the monster goes on top. The monster now has 2 overlay units. Think of these as bullets in a gun. The Xyz monster is a gun, and these are bullets in the magazine. They are no longer monsters on the field, as you can see by the artwork of them floating around the monster. Now, why is this important? This guy, which takes 2 level 4 dinosaur monsters, oh hey, look at that, has this effect. When an opponent would activate normal special summon, or a spell and / trap is activated, as a quick effect, detach 2, so remove and send to grave. Negate the summon or the activation, and if you do, destroy it. It's basically Solemn Judgment. A very powerful counter trap, but this is spell speed 2. Now for Dolka, this one, same summoning condition, but when another monster effect is activated, quick effect, you can detach 1 material from the card, negate the activation, and destroy the monster. So you can do this twice. For Tornado Dragon, once per turn, so once per copy, you can detach a material from this card, target a spell or trap on the field, and destroy it. So this will be good if your opponent has a card that prevents special summoning too much. You can just do that, ruin their day. Now for Utopia, this was one of the very first Xyz monsters made. It's actually the main ace monster, the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zale or Zexal. Now we don't really care about the effect, but if you want to know, when any monster declares an attack, including itself, you can, on a quick effect, detach an Xyz material from the card and negate the attack. But it also has a weird stipulation that when it is targeted for an effect, when it's targeted for an attack that has no Xyz material, it's destroyed. Now, this is a weird effect, but it's added to quote-unquote nerf it. It wasn't really needed. It wasn't like that in the anime. And we don't actually care about the damage negation, the attack blocking. What we do care is that this guy is a Utopia monster who is rank 4. Why? Oh, hello there, Mr. OTK. Utopia the Lightning. You can, instead of using 3 level 5s, you can Xyz summon this card using a rank 4 Utopia monster you control as material, and it says, transfer its materials to this card. If you somehow use an Xyz monster as Xyz material, most of the time the material would go to the grave, because the monster is essentially no longer existing. So it has to specify this. Now, it cannot be used as material for an Xyz summon, so you can't make one of this and then put another copy of itself on top of it and then do it again. You can't do that. Now, if this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step, so after it is attacked and is finished attacking. Once per chain, so once per... Essentially, like, I activate one card and then I activate another one, that creates a chain. And then activate another one that extends the chain. If you play Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, you can actually see it in action, but I don't have a way to demonstrate that here and now. Now, once per chain, so you can't use this multiple times per chain, but you can use it multiple times per turn. If this card battles an opponent's monster while it has a Utopia Xyz monster as material, you can detach 2 overlay units, and this card's attack becomes 5,000 until the end of the damage calculation only. This is huge. So if our opponent has, say, Zark, and has actually properly summoned this guy out, well, here's your ray of hope right here, which is why it's named Hope. You can make it 5,000, smack him over beat him over the head with it, and you get to remove a very big problem from the opponent's field. Now, with all that being said, I will now show you the basic game plan of how to play this deck. I'm sorry that this isn't really very well structured. And then my alarm played in the middle of this. But this is the first time I'm doing a proper deck profile. And I don't have the luxury of a video editing software or the skills of how to use it. Now, to teach you all who don't actually know how the zones work, let me show you here. This is the field spell zone. Does it say it? No, it doesn't. Okay, I'll just show it to you. Here we have 5 zones. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are where your monsters go, from the main deck or the extra deck. These 2 little slots are shared with your opponent. These are called the extra deck slots, or the extra monster zones. These are where monsters from the extra deck go. You can put them there. It's also the only place Link monsters can go to, but we don't have them, so you don't have to worry about it. Just know for this, it's just an extra spot for you to put your fusion monsters. These are your spell and trap zones. And for the 2 furthest most ones, they also act as pendulum zones. So these are zones where pendulum monsters can act as spells. Then we have the place for our main deck, which you can see over here, and the slot for the extra deck, which you can see, hold on, wait, which you can see over here. Can I extend this tripod? Ah, I can extend the tripod, perfect. Now here is your graveyard, here's the field spell zone, but we don't have field spells, and the banishment is anywhere. I mean, usually you can put it like above the graveyard or to the side of the graveyard if you'd like. And where does your token go? Wherever the hell you want. It's not an actual card. You can even use playing cards or random pencils you find as tokens. Now, the main combo. 1 card combo with this. Normal summon this card. Theresia, activate her effect. Set a Dinomorphia spell or trap from your deck to the field. You want to set Frenzy. There's a very good reason why you want to do this. Actually, no, not Frenzy. Domain. You want Domain, because you want your life points to be as low as possible for when you get out Rexstrom. This is assuming you only have 1 card in hand, so if you have any other spells or traps, feel free to set them. Well, for traps, for spells, not really. Most of the spells in our deck are made to increase consistency or draw deeper into the deck so we can do more stuff. Now, this isn't a combo deck, it is a control deck, but even a control deck needs combos. Then, you pass turn to your opponent, which means you say, I end my turn, it is now your turn. They draw their card, the standby happens, then they do something, and in response, you activate your trap card, Domain. With this, you fusion summon using 1 Theresia and 1 Diplos, as you would. And you summon out your old friend Gina. Once this is resolved, it goes to the graveyard, as does everything. Now, because you have manipulated your deck in some way, shape, or form, you must shuffle your deck. This is a rule you cannot break. The only time you don't have to shuffle is if a card specifically tells you that you don't have to. And of course, your opponent cuts the deck. Then they hand it back to you, and it goes there. Then, you can activate Kentrogena, banish this to copy itself. Now you fusion summon again. This time, you're going to get out Rexstrom. So, with your remaining copy of, and this is why I don't like shuffling during deck profiles, but I have to for the integrity of the video. Do we have another? No, we do not. Do we have another Diplos in here? These sleeves are attracted together with static electricity, so it's not really easy to. You know what? Yeah. With 1 Diplos and herself, because she's a fusion monster, you can now bring out Rexstrom. At this point, your life points have been halved twice, which means they're now at 2,000. What this means is now any monster your opponent controls that has 2,000 or more attack is going to be unable to actually activate their effects. Now, you have to time this correctly. If you use it on a monster they used to start the game with, start that combo when it is like 500 attack, don't. Do it when they're about to fusion summon, synchro summon, XZ summon, or link summon. Pendulums can also be in the main deck, I'm sorry to let you know. So, for example, let me go get another one of my decks. Let's use my Insecto deck as an example. If they were to summon, say, Sachi, the Ceremonial Bow. This is a very integral part of insect combos. Now you bring out Rexstrom, now she can't activate her effect, which means that the insect combo is now ruined. I just gave you all a tip on destroying my signature deck. You're welcome. Now, this deck is not the flashiest. It is far from being flashy. You're not going to get big freaking KOs. You're not going to be able to summon out a giant, titanic, robotic dragon that will be able to breathe fire upon all your enemies and then send them running away out of fear. You're not going to be able to summon a field of 6 monsters that end up making a million different negations against your opponent. If you want to do that, play Snake Eyes, or if your budget, play insects, because you can do that with insects. This deck is meant for you to control the pace of the game. You control it at your own pace. Now, with all that being said, I know this video isn't going to reach a lot of people. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game where the fanbase is largely consisting of people who have seen the original anime, people who only know about it via a couple memes from, like, the very tip of the iceberg, or some people who have genuinely watched the anime or have played it since young, who slowly but surely have actually evolved alongside the game, and have nostalgia for it, and at this point are kind of in a Stockholm situation. They have Stockholm Syndrome to the game, and they keep buying cards. Oh, hello, infinite decks full of cards. I didn't see you there. So, because of this, I can't use my hands to gesture. I'm going to use something else. So, because of this game is not going to reach a lot of people, and it's also not going to reach a lot of viewers either. I know this video isn't really going to reach a lot of people. But if you do find this, there's a couple websites on Google where you can just play Yu-Gi-Oh! For free. With your email address, of course, but you can play it for free. Duel Nexus comes to mind. There's also Dueling Book, but that one's less automated. You actually have to know how to play the game IRL, and the computer doesn't take care of it for you, so it's not like a video game. So I recommend you try Dueling Nexus or YGO Pro or something else. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel also is an option, but you actually need to grind a lot for that one. You don't just get all the cards you want. If you're one of my friends who actually plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Hello, Carla. Then I hope you try out Dinomorphia. It's a really fun deck, kind of. I mean, it's not as cool as summoning an infinite field full of insects, where you get to subjugate the opponent as they lay before your feet. It's not like that. But it's kind of cool, watching them grunt in frustration as you summon a giant T-Rex, which doesn't let them play the game. Thank you for watching this video. I'm sorry it's so long, but I hope this deck profile has helped you. Ciao!